What up, world? This is the GoalNet, recording live from GoalNet Studios here outside of Chicago, and moving to our first ever long-term video review. Based on some recent feedback we got on Instagram, I'm going to try and move away from written reviews and focused on video reviews. So the first subject of our long-term video review are the CCM P2 pads. I will also make separate videos diving in on the glove and the blocker. So in case you missed it, on thegoalnet.com, you can check out my initial written review, which was for initial impressions. I like to do 2 reviews because if you skate in something, say 0 to 6 times and then 6 times to up to a year, gear changes as it breaks in, your opinion of the gear changes as you get more and more reps in it. And that's why I think it's very important to do 2 different reviews. And again, based off the Instagram feedback, we're moving to a long-term review, and I will try and do all video reviews even on initial impressions. So I was fortunate enough to get these pads a bit ahead of the retail release. I want to say I got these back in late March, early April, and I believe they released to retail in May. And I've been wearing them on and off, rotating with some other sets since that point in time. But overall, we're looking at about 9 months of use, and I'd say on average, they probably got 1 skate a week. Sometimes I wore them 3 times in a week, and sometimes I didn't wear them for 2 weeks. But I'd say 1 skate a week overall during that time is a pretty good amount of wear. And first things first, if we take a look at the pads themselves, you'll see no major crazy wear on them. I did get a mix of speed skin and weave on my pads. So any of the white material here is the speed skin. Anything in red is weave, and anything in gold is also speed skin. So just kind of taking you through the pads. So really the only wear that I have on these pads is right here. On the upper corner, you can see the corner wore a little bit. I get this on pretty much all my pads in that exact same spot. Sometimes I even get it on both pads. Fortunately, my right pad here didn't get it with the P2s. Pretty realistic that that's definitely something with how I rest maybe between plays, how I stand at face-offs, how I stand in my stance, or something causing some friction in that area. And because I consistently get that on just about all my pads, I don't really knock CCM for that. And as we'll see here, do have a little bit of wear there, and that also is one of the other areas I get some wear. Pretty obvious. I'm a standard goalie, catch left. This is my right pad. That's definitely where I rest my blocker, and that's why you'd see the little bit of wear. And then the only other wear on these pads is not CCM's fault, would happen to anybody's pads. And I did a separate post talking about this repair, but I got a pretty nasty skate cut right there. But I repaired that with some epoxy, and as you can see, I can flex it. No issues, and visually, unless you're really zoomed in and focused on it, it's pretty well hidden. So that was a great fix. And then for whatever reason, have a little discoloration there in the boot, but that again, nothing with CCM. Inside of the pad on the sliding surface, pretty minimal to no wear. The knee block looks great as well. So one of the reasons I'm so focused with durability is that these pads feature speed skin, which was a brand new material launched for the EF3, carried over to the P2. It'll be on the EF4 as well. And due to some release issues between the way stuff is done at retail and the way stuff is done at the pros, speed skin hasn't really been available to the NHL guys a lot. And there seems to kind of be a myth out there that, speed skin is illegal in the NHL because it slides too well, or it's not durable enough to hold up to NHL use. And I just want to take this time to debunk that myth. Speed skin is NHL legal. And there's no reason from what I can tell, a pro guy wouldn't want to use it. It's just strictly been an issue relating to release cycles, and I think at some point we will start to see people adopt that in the NHL. So in terms of specs, aside from the speed skin, I went with a double internal brake, no external brake. This is different from stock, where the stock pads would have the external brake on them. I did opt for the soft boot and the full quick motion strapping. So let's just take a look. The boot flexes really well on these pads. And even though CCM pads are traditionally described as stiff when we think about the Premier Series, I find that these flex, really, really well. I personally wouldn't want a pad that flexes more than that. And as you can see, the boot moves really well as two. So these pads are really a perfect blend for me of stiffness and flexibility. And one of the key things is, with as much flex as these pads have, is the seal. And when we talk about the review, that is absolutely my favorite part about these pads, is the seal. These pads seal, I think, the best of any gear that I've worn over the last little while. And this is important, I think, because over time, as pads break in and loosen up, seal can fade. And these pads still seal, absolutely perfectly. So again, as we focus on the review points, my number one favorite thing about the CCM P2 pads. The next best feature for me on the P2 pads is the strapping system. I think, as well as we talk about best, I'm pretty comfortable saying that I think these pads seal the best of anything that I've used over the last couple of years. It's not to say other pads seal poorly, but these are definitely the best. My second favorite thing about these pads, which I think, again, for me, may be the best solution on the market right now, but there are some other strappings that I haven't tried, so it's not fair to designate anything the best, as I haven't used all of them. But of the stuff I've used, I really favor the quick motion strapping for a couple main reasons. One is it's incredibly simple. It's 3 Velcro straps that are all permanently fixed in place, literally strapping my pads on in about 30 seconds. So 1, 2, 3 basically, and we're done. And second, if anybody's followed anything I do with chest protectors, I think that elastic strapping can be somewhat overused. And we're coming from leather straps, sometimes I don't wonder why we use more nylon. And again, this goes to chest protectors as well. Certain areas don't need to flex, so I kind of question why we have elastic straps where we do. And again, some of this is my opinion, but that's what comes through in a review, is that CCM uses a nylon strap right here. And according to some research that they've done with one of the universities in Canada, this actually helps the pad seal faster because it's going to keep the pad more connected. And as you slide down toward the butterfly, it's actually going to get the pad to seal about an inch quicker than other pads they tested. Unfortunately, I'm not really able to quantify that I found that it sealed faster for me. I don't really have the testing means to validate what their findings are, but I can definitely say that the strapping is a great blend of comfort, ease to put on in the locker room, and then responsiveness on the ice. So I have absolutely no complaints about the straps, and I did not miss having any leather straps. And you'll also note that I don't have the boot strap on here. The only mod I did to these pads was attach the pro laces. I put these on all my pads. I'm a huge fan of them. Only change I do is I tie them on because I don't really like the bolts. But again, this combination for me of the pro laces, no boot strap, and the quick motion strapping was really, really phenomenal. Other things to note on the CCM pad, and I'll call this one of the reasons why we do 2 reviews, is the speed skin. So as I mentioned in my review, initially the written one, and I do stand by this, is that speed skin can vary in terms of its effectiveness compared to Gen Pro, depending on the quality of the ice conditions that you're skating on. So if you are on absolutely perfect clean ice, speed skin flies. If you're on choppier ice, or you're getting later in a game where there might be some snow, some buildup, and the ice isn't quite as smooth, the effectiveness of the speed skin starts to deteriorate a little bit. But if you're somebody that plays a level of hockey where you still get a zam between periods and you're constantly on fresh ice, speed skin is going to be a really great option for you. If you are a beer league guy that's really, really concerned about sliding side to side, and your ice conditions deteriorate, or your home rink doesn't have the best ice, there might be some better options with you with sliding. But overall, I can say that speed skin does work better than I initially found in my initial review. As I got these pads on different ice surfaces and skated on some rinks with some way better ice surfaces, I got to like the speed skin more and more. So that's definitely one thing that has surprised me, and I would definitely call an improvement for me with these pads versus my initial impressions review. Last key point I want to focus with in terms of my reviews are the rebounds. So again, most people classify P2 as a very stiff pad. I don't personally think that they're that crazy stiff. I think they really are a nice hybrid depending on how you get your brakes set up of flexibility and stiffness. They aren't the stiffest pad on the market by what I can tell, and definitely not at least in the configuration I got. But one of the things CCM is doing differently is their rebounds. Basically, every other company on the market that's designing pads with hot rebound capability is doing it by making the pad face as hard as they can. And this is either done with some sort of insert like a carbon fiber or extremely high density foam. CCM's done a complete 180, and there's actually a material in the face of this pad that's very similar to like a running shoe midsole. And if you can just see inside the lace here, this little orange area, that is actually the foam, and you get a coupon of this material when you buy the pads to see what it is. So CCM has gone the soft route with their rebounds. So there's kind of two ways you can achieve a hot rebound. The one that most of the industry is going to is hard. So basically, when the puck hits a very hard object, the ball compresses and rebounds, and that's what gives you a rebound. CCM's approach is to let the pad do the rebounding. So when the puck hits the pad face, the puck itself doesn't compress as much as it would if it were hitting a hard surface, but the foam inside the CCM pad absorbs the rebound and then transfers it back into the puck to shoot the pads away. So unfortunately, again, don't have the testing, validation, or the time to put everybody's pads up to a machine and effectively measure the rebound, but I can say that CCM's rebound technology works really well. And one of the upsides I think you'll find if you're a goalie who wants a more traditional pad feel is that any of the pads on the market with a hard face kind of have a harsh feel, and you can really feel the puck kind of hit the pad firmly and bounce off, versus the CCM rebounds feel like the way pads were made 4, 5, 6 years ago before people started going to the harsh faces to get rebounds. And this is a feel option 100%. Some people are gonna like the hard feel of the inserted pads, and some people are gonna love the soft insert on the CCM pad. And one thing to note is I found when you get a hard shot, everybody's pads fly, and I think that maybe the hard face pads might even have a tad bit more pop here. But when it comes to softer shots, I found the quick rebound technology, the max rebound technology from CCM to really shine versus some of the hard face pads. But again, this is strictly a goalie preference. But the great upside is, again, if you're a goalie who wants a more traditional feeling pad face, CCM is going to feel more like the way pads used to be built, where it's a little bit softer when the pad hits the face versus that really hard feeling like it's hitting a. And the last thing I want to note in my review is the weight. So the P2s are not strictly the lightest weight pad on the market, but one of the things you have to know with pads is that generally speaking, the lighter the foam's inside of a pad, the softer they are, and you might get things where if you squeeze your pads, they might be able to bow in that area versus the CCMs barely move. So CCM's done a phenomenal job of maintaining stability, maintaining seal, but redesigning the foam inside the pad core to make it lighter. And P2, the last generation of Premier Series were a little bit heavy compared to the rest of the competition in the market. And CCM has definitely caught up in this regard where, again, the P2 may not be the lightest, but it's only missing out by a couple of ounces. And absolutely nobody's going to pick these pads up and say that they're too heavy or they're getting fatigue from using them by any means. And I have, if anybody follows my account, I tweaked a set of Brian's pads to literally make them as light as possible. And although those pads may have been lighter, again, these CCM pads, you're not going to hold them up next to those and go, man, these are too heavy, I'm not going to use them. And that was kind of a knock on some of the older generations of Premiers. So in closing, I'm a huge fan of these pads. I would definitely recommend them to goalies that want a stiffer pad versus a more flexible one. And as I've reiterated a couple times, I personally find these pads to have a great balance with the double internal brake and no external between stiffness and flexibility. The pad does give what I want it to give, but it's still got, that amazing seal, and you can hear it's got kind of a nice comforting thud when it pops down. The pad just stays in shape excellently. You're not going to get any twisting, any torquing, or anything like that. The rebound technology within these pads works. It is a much different feel than some of the harder faced pads, and it's a good upside if something you're looking for. And the speed skin works really well. That's been, again, my biggest surprise after using these pads, that initially I was a bit lukewarm on it, and I can say it definitely works well. And if you play at a really good rink and you're getting zams regularly, you're gonna fly in the speed skin. One other closing note on speed skin too that I found to be a little bit different compared to some of the other sliding materials is some of the other sliding materials may have a little bit more of an effortless slide where you can, get a minimum push and really fly. But I think one of the upsides too to speed skin is that it's a little bit more realistic. Like if you want to do a little bit of a lighter push, you're not going to over push with these. And if you do a bigger push, you're going to get a bigger slide. So I found speed skin to be a little bit more what you put in is what you get out. And again, I think that's going to come to a preference. Do you want a pad that's a little bit more responsive in the sense, little push, little side, big pad, big slide? Or are you somebody that just, needs that extra second getting across and you want the maximum slide at all times, but I don't think you're losing too much ground with speed skin by any means. So overall, pads caught up in weight. The strapping system might be my favorite on the market right now. I really don't have a single negative thing to say about the strapping. Speed skin's been great. The rebounds are really nice on these pads. And again, the classic CCM seal is still the number one reason, in my opinion, to use these pads. And it's one of the reasons that they're so trusted in the pros. CCM gear is very consistent set to set, and you're not going to get any squeakers with these pads at all. So check out my other reviews, which will be coming soon for the glove and the... And aside from checking out the glove and blocker review, if it's really not clear, these are by far and away the best CCM or Reebok or RBK Premier pad that has ever been released. And there seems to be another misconception in the market that, the P2 hasn't changed that much or the Premier Series doesn't change that much, but this is absolutely a different pad. And I'd venture to say it's probably the best pad that CCM has ever made. And that's really saying something considering they have about 50% market share in the NHL, and they're the number one pad selling at retail. So please understand that even the core of this pad is different, and you should definitely check them out if you are somebody that's used Premier for a long time, or maybe you think that the Premier Series hasn't been updated. It absolutely has. And these are really, really, again, a great pad. Been very, very happy.